So tonight is a night to do two things. First, we're invited to listen, and listen deeply, to the oration that is going to be given by Helen Bolton, the CEO of Respect Victoria. And then we are invited to act. The Empowering Women 50/50 Network patron, Libby Coker, MP for Corangamite, is going to share how organisations and individuals can play their part towards a greater gender equity in our community. Tonight's event is being recorded, and if you would like to revisit the discussion, potentially share it with a friend, that will be available on the Geelong Library YouTube channel in a few days' time. If you have any concerns about being part of the recording, then I'd invite you to speak with the library staff who are down the back who are supporting us, but just know the camera is only hitting the front. It isn't capturing the audience. So let's begin. I'm very pleased to introduce our guest speaker tonight. Helen Bolton is the CEO of Respect Victoria, with 30 years in senior leadership across government and not-for-profit sector. Now, she's not a stranger to many in this room, as Helen led the Sexual Assault and Family Violence Centre here in Geelong for many years. Helen has built her career towards addressing the causes and impacts of family and sexual violence and gender inequity. In joining Respect Victoria, Helen is passionate to lead and drive the prevention of gendered violence. She has contributed to significant reform, including presenting to the Royal Commissions and shaping government policy, and has served on numerous governance bodies and committees within community, justice and human rights. Please join me in welcoming our speaker for the Empowering Women 50/50 Network second annual oration, Helen Bolton.
Hello everyone, and thank you, Loretta. Karina, I just want to acknowledge what a strong and powerful woman that you are. I haven't heard you speak for a while, and I do attend a lot of Welcome to Countries, and that was so heartfelt and deep. When you talk about restoring women's position, when you talk about restoring language, when you talk about building cultural respect and safety. So I acknowledge you and thank you for all that you do for your community and all that you do for Geelong. So thank you for that welcome. Okay, get myself sorted here. So I would also like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung peoples of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land, the sky and the sea around us, and the land on which we meet. I pay my deepest respects to elders past and present, and to all First Nations people here today. Family violence against Aboriginal women and children is rooted in systemic oppression, colonisation, racism and gender inequality. Family violence is a gendered issue and one that heavily impacts Aboriginal women, being overrepresented and misidentified in our system. But the violence experienced by First Nations women is most often involving a non-Aboriginal partner, and this factor frequently goes uncounted in mainstream data and narratives, and that needs to be restored. My thanks to Jenny Wills and the Empowering Women 50/50 Network Geelong, in partnership with the Women in Local Democracy, for inviting me here tonight to talk about gendered violence and how one community is building place-based prevention and early intervention in Ballarat to tackle this issue. Before I get into my presentation though, I'd like to recognise the significant impact of family, sexual and domestic violence on women, children, young people, and on gender and sexually diverse people, on culturally and racially marginalised people, and women with a disability, in fact, on all marginalised individuals, families and communities, and the strength and resilience that they have and show while still experiencing this violence. Also, just a gentle content warning tonight. I will be talking about family, sexual and domestic violence. Gendered violence is what I call it. And that is men's violence upon women and children. And this reflects the prevalence and evidence base that most violence is caused by men and most victims are women. Gender and sexually diverse people are also overrepresented and violence inflicted upon children. But that's not to say it's all men. We know that saying. We need men as part of the solution. Men need to be stepping up and leading the response and leading the conversations. So it's great to see you here tonight. I also want to honour and acknowledge women and children whose lives were taken from them. I acknowledge the grief and the loss of their families, friends and communities who have had those loved ones taken from them all too soon. It remains unacceptable that still today in our advanced society that violence is in Australia is at epidemic levels. And I understand that many of us in this room will have a direct experience of this violence and the trauma and harm that it inflicts. If at any time you need to take a break or leave the room, please do so. I will be talking about a community that's mobilised to address violence and to challenge violence supportive attitudes rather than individual cases of violence. But I recognise the deep pain and trauma that can surface and that many people carry. So I will be here after the event and welcome you to come and chat. And lastly, I want to give recognition to all the frontline staff for their dedication, expertise, professional passion and tenacity. Your work is the hardest and the most rewarding, all in one day. Thank you for all that you do. And I'm also sure that there are many highly experienced prevention practitioners in the room who have far greater knowledge than me. And this presentation is a small reflection into the work of the extraordinary Respect Victoria team, and my gratitude is to them for their deep expertise and commitment to this work. Let's see if I can get this little gadget going. Okay. So how did a regional city in Ballarat, in Victoria, take a collective stand against violence? In early 2024, Ballarat faced the devastating deaths of Samantha Murphy, Rebecca Young and Hannah Maguire. There was community grief and outrage. Women, men, children and families flooded the streets in a powerful protest for change and demanded action by government, by leaders and by everyone in the city. By doing so, the Ballarat community mobilised into a people-powered movement and refused to accept that the murders of these women, including Samantha, Rebecca and Hannah, should happen to anyone else. Not long after the rally, Respect Victoria was funded by the Victorian Government to partner with local organisations and deliver a multi-year place-based prevention initiative in Ballarat, now known as Respect Ballarat, as named by the community. To support the first 4 years of a community saturation model to prevent violence in Ballarat, it's no small task. Respect Ballarat is a community model to prevent gendered violence and is the first initiative of its size and scale in Australia, and it provides an opportunity to deliver violence prevention activities at scale, to design and implement comprehensive integrated prevention approaches that combine primary prevention together with early intervention, and to build evidence on what works to prevent gendered violence at a community and a population level, an element in Australia that we've been missing across many areas. But we know that gendered violence is happening in every postcode in the country, and this violence is preventable. It's not inevitable. Ballarat has a long history of activism, fighting for safety, justice, equality, and saying enough is enough. It goes back to the Goldfields and their rebellion. Respect Ballarat's prevention work builds on decades of work and evidence by Vic Health, by Women's Health Services across Victoria, by local governments, by Our Watch, and other prevention partners across Australia. Communities such as Ballarat are ready, willing, and capable of driving change when it comes to preventing gendered violence. So in May 2024, the Victorian Government responded to Ballarat's call for change and announced $9.8 million over 4 years to fund the design and the delivery of an evidence-informed, place-based saturation approach to preventing gendered violence. And that's where we are today. I'll give you just a quick overview, aware of time, of Respect Victoria, just for people that aren't familiar with us. So we are Victoria's unique and dedicated agency for the prevention of family violence and committed to stopping violence from occurring in the first place by changing the conditions that drive it. You will see on the slides our purpose and key principles and the collective impact framework that guides Respect Ballarat. Our primary prevention work includes driving quality sustained uptake of prevention work across the state, building knowledge and evidence about what works to prevent violence, keeping prevention on the policy and public agenda, and particularly with governments and society. We've done a lot of that this week with media about the Sydney Swans. And supporting social change and educating the community that violence is preventable amidst a complex and rapidly evolving policy and social context. We undertake research, evaluation, prevention coordination with our partners, community education campaigns, and policy advice. Respect Victoria is providing the backbone support to connect and coordinate action across Ballarat, to share learning and continue building the evidence on what works to change social conditions and ultimately drive down the rates of violence. This is a bit of our framework that drives and informs our collective evidence kind of impact agenda for Ballarat. We do not deliver direct services, we don't have clients, and we're not associated with the 1800 Respect family violence support services that we often get confused with. So if we go to the causes of violence, and sorry for those in the room that know this, I will try and skim through it fairly quickly. But we know from research, sorry that didn't move, that there are 4 main factors that underpin violence against women. As you will see on the screen, it reflects an iceberg, the top of it being what we often see in society, and then the below the line behaviours that might not be as obvious, that often happen behind private closed doors. But we know that they are attitudes, behaviours and actions that condone, minimise or excuse violence against women, or that shift blame from the perpetrator to the victim. Another driver is men's control of decision-making and limits to women's independence in public and private life, hence why actions about having 50-50 representation and gender equity is so important. Another driver is rigid gender stereotyping and dominant forms of masculinity, and male relationships and cultures that emphasise aggression, dominance and control, such as the manosphere or the privilege and entitlement that we're currently seeing playing out in the AFL and in other institutions, most recently in New South Wales with some young schoolboys. And cultures which excuse, disrespect, diminish women's authority, normalise male dominance, and that rigidly uphold rigid gender roles to create the conditions which violence becomes more likely and normalised. Gendered violence is not caused by anger, stress, alcohol, substance abuse, or financial pressure. These factors are contributors, but they're not in and of themselves the cause. Using violence is a choice that one person makes to harm and hurt another. Primary prevention gives an opportunity to intervene in that choice. That choice is based on the attitudes, behaviours and beliefs that that person holds and the structural conditions that enable it. Family violence occurs in all communities across all demographics, all ages, cultures, ability, gender, sexual identity and socio-economic status. However, specific groups experience disproportionate levels of violence and face unique impacts and systemic barriers due to factors such as ableism, age, homophobia, racism, and other forms of discrimination. So, to think about primary prevention, where does it fit and what does it do? So prevention begins long before any act of violence. The social conditions for violence begin with the stories that we tell children. It begins with the expectations that we place on boys and girls. It is fueled by harmful notions of masculinity and rigid gendered stereotypes, as I've mentioned. And for our non-binary and trans community, it's also fueled by homophobia and trans misogyny. Violence lives in the cultures and environments that we tolerate. It lives in schools, sporting clubs, in media, faith communities, and so many other institutions, not just our homes. Violence begins in silence, when we remain quiet. Ballarat showed you can use your voice. And prevention begins when we decide silence is no longer acceptable. Primary prevention is working to stop violence before it starts by changing the conditions that allows it to happen. And this is not an article of faith. This is a statement based on evidence by the World Health Organization. Prevention addresses the underlying attitudes, beliefs, behaviours and social conditions that enable violence rather than responding to it after the harm has been done. And this diagram here on the green, blue and purple reflects the continuum of services from prevention to recovery. And it's really important that that continuum is funded at scale, at capacity, for all elements of it to work together to be able to support people who are experiencing, people who are using violence, to support children in early intervention and to support prevention at scale. Ending violence requires all of us to play a role. Every conversation, every workplace action, every school, respectful relationships, sporting clubs and local governments have the power to reject behaviours that condone or minimise violence and instead promote respect, accountability and inclusion. When we collectively reject violence in any form and actively foster cultures that value equality and respect, we create the conditions in which violence is less likely to thrive, through shared commitment and actions of us all. It's up to all of us. I had a quick look at violence prevalence in Victoria. So you will see from 2020, 2021 through to 2024, 2025, it depicts an increase in family violence in Victoria. Respect Ballarat commenced in 2024-25, although this is Victoria. We're using some of this data as our baseline data in Ballarat, and we've got specific data that's very similar for the Ballarat community. And part of our evaluation will be looking at indicators of change and whether that trajectory will track down over time. Funded activity for Respect Ballarat only commenced in February 2026. But in Ballarat, we expect to see a continued increase in help seeking, including calls to police and to support services, as people learn more about what safe and respectful relationships are, and to see the signs of violence, and as we start to move the barriers to seeking support. We also understand that good prevention work and community education will drive help seeking into services, and there still remains significant underreporting of this violence in our community. When looking at the rate per 100,000 population, Ballarat generally records a higher family violence incident rate per 100,000 people than Geelong, even though Geelong records a higher raw volume of incidents due to a significantly larger population. So kind of more recidivist activities happening in Ballarat. The local government areas with the highest family rates per capita in Victoria are predominantly in regional areas, and the kind of western area, southwest down through to Portland, up to the South Australian border, has a particularly high rate of family violence. East Gippsland is 40% above the state average. Geelong is 14 to 15% above the state average, and Ballarat is 26% above the state average. Just kind of gives a bit of a picture and context. So, what is a community saturation model? Respect Ballarat, as I said, came from that groundswell and therefore is a community approach, a genuine community approach to preventing gendered violence that's been informed in parallel by extensive international research and local knowledge, design and community engagement that demonstrates the impact of place-based community-led approaches to preventing violence by saturating an area with activities that reinforce each other. This was the rally and the call for action in Ballarat. Our initial phase included a dedicated co-design process with community representatives. So we got together leaders in Ballarat and had a round table and said, how is violence showing up in your community? Where are the areas of need? What are the themes, the trends? What supports do you need and what gaps are there? So we did that full service mapping. We established principles to help guide around priority people and places, and I'll talk more about that shortly. And we looked at the strengths and opportunities of the Ballarat community. It was important it's not just a deficits model. We had deep conversations with diverse communities. We ran online surveys and focus groups for the general public in Ballarat. And then we had consultation with the local response services, the aligned organisations, local government. Women's Health Grampians has a core alliance, the Communities of Respect and Equality. They have 160 members who have joined up to a pledge, like you're doing tonight, about gender equality. And we met with the core alliance. It's made up of businesses, not-for-profit, statutory authorities, ordinary family-run businesses. It's been an incredible model. We contracted consultants, so the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, TAXI, who helped to lead a co-design process. And in a minute, I've got a bit of a map that will show you kind of where we've been for the last 2 years. But just that little bit I talked about took about 12 months. We needed to build trust and relationships in the community. We're seen as government, even though we're a statutory authority, we're kind of quasi-government. We think we're more connected to the community. But government coming into a regional area and saying, hey, show us, what's happening in your community and we'll bring you a solution, was just not going to cut it. It had to be hand in hand, had to be led by them, had to be surfaced by them. So the term saturation describes not so much the model itself, but its ultimate goal. That is the achievement of maximum impact that could be expected from efforts to prevent violence against women by concentrating kind of multiple activities in a certain way across a defined location or with a defined group. So for us, in thinking of Respect Ballarat, it's a contained community area. We chose just the city of Ballarat. It's not broader than that. We defined the group as intimate partner violence, and I'll talk more about that soon. So we tried to recognise that to genuinely saturate, you have to have a limited area that you can impact the most by the funding and the effort that you have. So it was a coordinated and concentrated approach to prevention across all the places that people live, work, play, learn, socialise. It goes beyond kind of the traditional individual programmatic prevention that we tend to fund, a program here, a program over there, and it brings together reinforcing kind of mutual effort and systemic change. So all parts of that system working together. Respect Ballarat is reaching people with coordinated prevention initiatives in sporting clubs. So last weekend we had every football netball club in Ballarat participate in their Respect Cup. We've run a number of training sessions and I consider myself part of the local action. It's led by the Centre Against Sexual Assault, by the local council, by the Community Health Services, and we go along as a guest and contributor. You okay? That's okay. We have activities, and I'll show you a little bit more, in libraries, in schools, in workplaces, in multicultural settings, in LGBTIQA+ communities, and in faith-based organisations. We also connect organisations and people to government and to leaders to share responsibility and leverage resources and power and influence to leverage their policies, their municipal health plans, to have indicators and expectations around primary prevention and gender equality. It helps build that kind of sustainable commitment to preventing gendered violence into the future. And it's about kind of bringing everyone in at all levels. Here is kind of the pathway, and I don't expect any of you can read this, but it just kind of shows a journey over the 2-year period of the work that we've done. Women's Health Grampians have been a long-term leader of primary prevention and gender-based violence in Ballarat, and they've been central to the success of Respect Ballarat. They are our local lead, so we have an appointed lead organisation, and they co-chair the governance group. They deliver a number of prevention initiatives across the city, such as the Men's Initiative. They work in male-dominated workplaces to bring awareness and understanding of gendered violence, and they help to educate how workplaces can take a lead role in addressing cultures and attitudes that condone violence. There are some great examples. One of them that kind of resonated with me was Central Highlands Water, so a water board. It is traditionally a male-dominated workplace. They took on the Men's Initiative, all of the workplace, about 200 people, undertook training about identifying and responding to family violence. They then had male champions in the workplace, and they have policies and procedures about kind of a non-violent attitude. There was a new pipeline coming into Ballarat, so Central Highlands Water said to that contractor, hey, you've got to do this training. We want all your workforce to understand primary prevention, gender-based violence, and respectful relationships. So just a great example of what can be done for very little cost, but through leadership and through leverage. They deserve a clap, it's great. They've got a little YouTube video that I'll send a link through to Jenny. It is just fantastic. It's normal guys in their workplace, engineers talking about growing up in homes of violence, not wanting to be like their dad, not wanting a family home that's disrupted by violence, reflecting on their own attitudes and behaviours and how they've come through that. It's just like amazing stuff. So, this type of model has never been done before at this size or scale in Victoria or Australia. There's been many effective primary prevention approaches being implemented across the state and country, but this is the first of its kind that has the resourcing, the oversight and the investment for a whole of community approach in a specified location. Primary prevention, as you know, is generational work that needs sustained action and investment at scale. All of our work as well is underpinned by our Watch's Change the Story prevention framework. So, the stages of a model. We're currently in stage 3. So, year 2, coming to just past the end of year 2. We're funded for 4 years. International evidence is saying it takes 10 years to implement a reduction of the indicators of violence against women, a reduction of the reported events. So we've got 4. So we're in the kind of third phase of implementation. We have funded in February and in April this year 21 projects on the ground and 2 system lead initiatives, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. What was important in our implementation in sections 1 and 2 was the scoping, so all of that co-design and consultation and testing some elements of the model, the kind of coordinated effort that made this model stand apart was that we had so many community members coming and saying, how can we get involved? What can we do? We want to be part of it. Am I going for time, Loretta? Okay. We've only got like 10 more slides. I shall whip through them. While this model is focused on place, you're not going to make sense of this. This is our work with the community around what does kind of the program logic look like. So starting with, why Ballarat, what are kind of the principles and indicators of violence. Thank you. What was the enabling environment and what's the community mobilisation, and then kind of the vision about what we want. So a very kind of interactive theory of change. We have a more kind of academic theory of change, and I'm happy to send through a copy of these slides as well. But as I said, the Respect Ballarat, I don't need to be stereo, do I? I might give it to you. It focuses on intimate partner violence, so a very kind of small slice of violence that's occurring. But the evidence tells us that by addressing this form of violence has wider positive impacts on other forms of family and gendered violence. The model will result in a multi-year project that intentionally builds evidence by piloting, evaluation and refining an approach that builds on what is known of best practice, multi-component place-based programming and the development of a fully evaluated and transferable model. It will require several stages of design, testing and refinement, and it's envisaged that we will be with Ballarat for several years. In asking Ballarat what were the behaviours that they identified for change, I'll let you read them, but it's very much tied to what we identified earlier as those drivers of violence. We worked with the Ballarat community to identify domains of change, and these were the important kind of areas to invest and apply and concentrate our effort. We then refined it down to, if we've only got limited funding, what's the maximum impact that we can have? What's the minimum viable model? So what are the priority people and places? And you'll start to see that kind of through that whole co-design consultation stage, it's really shaped where the funded activity has been aligned. So the Ballarat community wanted to focus on young people, new parents, a focus on fathers, community leaders and men. The priority places are early years settings, sports clubs, workplaces and educational settings. For education, we all want our kids to have a safe, healthy and respectful relationship, but sometimes they aren't getting the right messages about what those relationships look like, whether it's social media, friendships, where controlling your partner is considered normal. And so that's why our work in schools, particularly secondary schools, universities, is helping young people to learn about consent, gender equality and respectful relationships. It's about helping young people to cut through the noise and setting them up for healthy relationships and a life where they're safe and treat others with respect. You're probably all very aware of the importance of sport and how it's woven into community culture, but sometimes not everyone is made to feel safe and welcome. So we focus on respect on and off the field. In early years, again, we're working with parents and carers to shape how children understand respect, equality and safety in relationships. There are more than 11,000 couples with new children in Ballarat, and many of them are first-time parents. So it's about giving them the tools and support to model healthy and equal relationships. And men have a critical role to play in prevention, because preventing violence isn't just the responsibility of victim survivors, of specialist services, of women or governments. It's something that we all have a role in shaping. As I said earlier, most men don't use violence towards women, and all men can help create cultures where disrespect, entitlement and harmful gender stereotypes are challenged rather than accepted. That might mean modelling respectful relationships, speaking up when behaviour isn't okay, supporting gender equality, creating safer workplaces, using your leadership and supporting your community. One of the strengths of prevention is that it invites everyone to be part of the solution. The evidence tells us that that lasting change happens when communities collectively reject the attitudes and behaviours that drive violence. In relation to our funded activity, we've resourced local organisations and partnerships to grow their prevention and early intervention work, to trial innovative practice and bring tried and tested models to Ballarat. I won't go through them, but you'll see what they are, and they're the people and places that we talked about. Most of these initiatives have deep partnerships, so there could be 6 partners in one of the activities. And we have settings leads, so we're doing work with First Nations, and we're doing some social norms action learning at the moment. They will have a report in September about kind of what the attitudes are in Ballarat and how that affects behaviours. But Women's Health Grampians, they're the leader that are providing a whole range of supports to ensure that Respect Ballarat is successful. We have funded the City of Ballarat to be the settings lead across early years and across sporting clubs, recognising their natural connection to both sports clubs and the maternal and child health early years organisations to bring about systemic change. So dedicated settings leads are a vital component of sustainable kind of systems change. So we know that if you can approach the structural drivers across those areas through a local government, you have far greater impact. I won't go into evaluation. Very happy to provide any evaluation material that we're producing and talk to you about that. But you would recognise that all eyes of Australia are on Respect Ballarat. We do have to do that kind of evidence evaluation, knowledge translation, early learnings. We've got a longitudinal evaluation happening at the moment, and we've got some kind of social norms research that we're doing with Roy Morgan as well. Whilst it's early days in Ballarat, we are looking for what we can see as positive changes. We're working with the Ballarat Foundation. This is a fairly unique element. So the Ballarat Foundation have started a Ballarat Future Fund for Respect Ballarat. When government funding finishes in 4 years, we're hoping to attract philanthropic funding. We're doing prospectuses and pitches at the moment with the foundation for future support for Ballarat, just to deliver on the promise that was made. This is Cheryl Moody's reflection mural in Ballarat of Ballarat women. It's a really powerful community installation, and so many conversations are happening around that mural. But what we're seeing for Ballarat around the change is that we're seeing a sense of pride. It was a community that was grief-stricken and ashamed. They've changed that around. They're showing leadership, they're showing pride, they're showing strength that prevention is possible and that they are doing it. They're valuing their partnerships. As I said, workplaces are stepping up. It's been really great just to kind of see the difference that's occurred across so many cohorts. We're asking ourselves a whole lot of sustainability questions at RV at the moment. How do we keep this going? How do we get another site? What would another site look like? Who would want to be another site? There's some elements about if someone like Geelong was interested, this is how that you would go about it. So we can also continue this conversation. We have lots of resources, templates, knowledge, information, and really happy to support any activity in Geelong. So thank you. Take that out and we'll provide a copy of the slides. Thank you.
Wow, that was an amazing unpacking of numbers of years of work. So thank you so much, Helen, and we've got a formal thank you in a moment. We have a few moments, though, for questions. So if you were sitting there and there was something that was gnawing in the back of your brain and you would like to ask Helen, we've got probably time for 2 or 3 questions. If every hand shoots up, Jenny, we're going to have to do something else. But if there's a few questions from the audience, and Helen, there's a glass over there if you need a drink of water. Kate, you've got a question? I'm going to come over to you.
Thanks, Helen. I had a question for nearly every slide, but how many people do you think you've touched in terms of, I know you said 11,000 new families, but how many people do you think it's touched in 2 years? And did you capture some baseline self-identification in, say, those 11,000 new dads? And have you already seen a shift in them?
Yep, great.
Sorry, before you answer, just want to say who you are.
Oh. Hi, I'm Kate Lockhart. I'm a survivor and hope to be a preventer too.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Kate. We do have a lot of baseline data that we've been collecting over the last 2 years. As our funded activity only started in February and March this year, we're yet to be able to kind of measure any significant change. All of the projects have kicked off, and the kind of reach has been enormous through schools and sporting clubs. We've got a project called Hannah's Voice, that is Hannah Maguire's parents who are wanting to honour her legacy and go into schools and talk to young people about respectful relationships, coercive control, and the murder of their daughter. We are starting our community activation ourselves as RV. So we've got a campaign called the Kind Man campaign that encourages men to reflect upon what sort of man they want to be. A couple of young tradies from Ballarat are part of that. We're running panels and activations and events, so we will start to kind of impact more of the community. I attended a men's forum back in February last year, and it was a family violence forum, and it was aimed at men. There was over 200 men in the room. There's hardly any women. It's the first time working in family violence in 30 years that I've seen that many men. Those men have stayed engaged. We've got a program, the community has a program working with TAFE apprentices. That's currently working with about 200 TAFE apprentices. We put out a survey through Roy Morgan only last week. We've already had 1,000 responses to that. So it's got a ripple effect. That being said, Ballarat's a population of a couple of 100,000. We've got a lot of work to do if we think that we can kind of reach out to all of those people and then measure some impact. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there another question?
Hi, Julie from, I'll stand up. Julie from Women's Health and Wellbeing, Bowen South West. I actually want to ask you around, I know this work is around cultural change, and we do know that cultural change does take 9-10 years, and in that a lot of iterative work is required. Have the community started thinking about that and thinking about ways that they'll be able to, I guess, carry the baton into the future to ensure that, I guess, there's not like a big concentration and things fizzle out, that there, is a sustained effort moving forwards?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We have a local evaluation implementation group. They've done a lot of learning and thinking through their evaluation. We have a sustainability strategy as well, so the Ballarat Community Future Fund is part of that. I don't know if I should say it in the room, but we're also going to put in a budget bid. We made a promise to the Ballarat community that we would be there for 10 years as RV. We don't get money ourselves, we give the money back out to the Ballarat community. This work is iterative, it is generational and long-term. The problem with primary prevention in Victoria is that it's short-funded programs, they're episodic. They try their best practice, they're great, and they're gone. We don't want that for Ballarat. We don't want that for Victoria anymore. This needs to be the way that Victoria delivers prevention at scale, longer term, across settings. Yeah.
I thought that was a great note to finish on. Thank you, Helen. I'd like to welcome Azadeh Dusti, who is a member of WILD, to thank Helen on behalf of all of us. Thanks, Azadeh.
Thank you, Helen. WILD strongly supports gender equality and believes it's essential to prevent violence against women and girls. This week, we have once again been reminded of the impact of gender-based violence. Our thoughts are with all women and girls who have experienced violence. It was very empowering to hear about the community-led work happening in Ballarat. Thank you for your informative address, compassion, and leadership. Please accept this small gift from WILD team as a token of our appreciation. Thank you.
Right, now it's my pleasure to move to stage 2. We've done our listening, now it's time to do some acting. There's role play coming. Haha, jokes. No. I was a theatre kid. We could do this. No, back to it. So it's my pleasure now to welcome the patron of Empowering Women 50/50 Network and Federal Member for Corangamite, Libby Coker. Now, Libby knows firsthand the important role that local government plays in supporting communities to thrive and why diverse voices and experiences at the decision-making table really matter. Her own political journey began in local government as Surf Coast Shire Councillor and Mayor before going on to represent our region in federal parliament. Throughout the journey, Libby has been a strong advocate for gender equity, women's safety and ensuring women have an equal voice in the decisions that shape our community. Please welcome Libby Coker.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that fabulous introduction. I would like to begin also by acknowledging our First Nations people, the Wadawurrung, and paying respects to Elders past, present and emerging, and to any First Nations people here this evening. I would like to acknowledge Karina. That was a beautiful song, and I think it was very powerful when you said about the fact that women in our region, Indigenous women, have for a very long time been leaders, and that is something that you are as well. And, you know, it's not an easy journey. And I just want to say well done to you, congratulations on what you do. And it's always a pleasure to hear from you, so thank you. I'd also like to thank Helen, really powerful. And when you see the posters of those women who have died from family violence, it is, you know, it just reminds us all about how important it is that we continue to invest and to work to stamp out family violence. As a federal government, we do recognise how important it is. We put significant funding into prevention, early intervention, crisis support and recovery. And I do want to acknowledge anyone in the room who is a victim, has been of family violence and is a survivor. It is something that is often hidden, and, you know, I think there comes a time when we need to give you support and to feel that you can share your experiences with others, because when you bring it out to the surface rather than leave it in the dark, we begin a process. So just a shout out to all of you. So my job this evening is to also talk to you about the pledge. Before I do so, I do want to give Jenny Wills a big shout out, because this needs support from many people. And you have worked so hard over many years because you truly believe in the role women play in leadership roles. And actually, yeah, so well done to you. And to the team at Wild. So it is a great pleasure to be with you this evening to celebrate the important next steps for Empowering Women 50/50 Network, and to celebrate the organisations and community leaders who are helping turn gender equality from an aspiration to an action. Victoria has been a trailblazer in this area, particularly through our state government's Gender Equality Act and the support they do give to Respect Victoria. So building on that important work, Wild kicked off the Empowering Women 50/50 Network to build community-wide support for safer, respectful, inclusive and equal communities, and for councils to reflect the diversities of the communities they represent. And since those early days, I've watched and we've watched Wild as it has grown. It's with its incorporation this year, with the expansion across the 5 local government areas of Greater Geelong, Queenscliff, Colac Otway, Surf Coast Shire and Golden Plains Shire. The network is strengthening its regional role, and tonight we're taking another important step with the launch of Empowering Women 50/50 Gender Equality Pledge. Now, this pledge is very important because it actually asks different organisations to take a couple of steps. The first one, it's about building gender equality, to actually agree that this is important and to be participants in decision making around helping women to become leaders in many different sectors of the wider Geelong region. Second, it's about strengthening local democracy through gender parity in council representation. Some people, I'd say all the people in this room, know why, but some people do say, why do we need this? And from my experience as a federal politician, I know that it is very important. We have now in government more than 50% female members of parliament. Our cabinet is top heavy with women. It's something to be very proud of, but it's not just about the numbers, it's about what those numbers deliver. So for us, there are many things that have not been a focus of government. So some of those women's health issues that have been never really had a focus. So for example, menopause, endometriosis, contraception, broadening it out to 6 months paid parental leave, 10 days paid family violence leave, some female dominated workforces that have now got better conditions and pay in areas such as early years education and aged care. These are significant investments, and it comes from having women at the table helping to make decisions, not just on those things, but on many things. And how do we get more women into positions of leadership? Well, we as a party decided on quotas about 20 years ago. And step by step, we have got there by ensuring that we had women who were pre-selected and represented, stood as candidates in our across Australia. And we've got there. We have to continue to work on that. And I do think when you look across the government, you see not just women, but also a diversity of different, difference, and everyone is included. And I think embracing that is really important. So going back to where we're at, I think this pledge is about continuing that journey. There's not one way that you get more women into local government and into leadership roles. There's many ways. One of them is potentially quotas, and another is for organisations from the grassroots to step up, sign the pledge, and actually let's work together to see that we do have greater numbers, starting with local government. At the moment, I think across our region, Jenny, there's not parity. And so we definitely, I believe, need to work on that. So what I'm asking of every organisation here and every person here is we want you to either, if you're an organisation, sign the pledge. And the pledge basically is saying that we, just putting my glasses on here, the pledge is that we acknowledge that equality underpins democratic participation and representation and is essential for achieving just, vibrant and sustainable communities. And the goals of the pledge are to build gender equality in participation and decision making in all community sectors, including cultural, economic, educational, environmental, financial, health, housing, legal, recreation, social and sporting areas. And on that note, I just want to say too, part of the federal government working to support women is also to do with family violence, significant investment. And part of that is housing. Housing is so important. You need to be able to be safe. And that is something we're putting significant money into that area. Back to the pledge goals, we're committing to promoting these goals. So we want you to commit to promoting those goals, but also to talk about it with others. If you work for an organisation, maybe they might be prepared to take up this pledge. And then I am really, from my perspective as a patron, I'm really hopeful that as we move closer to elections at local government, we've got some time, that we develop some mentors, that we go out and help women who want to stand, because it's not an easy process. And I can see some former councillors in the room, and it's lovely to have you here, Barb. And there may be others as well, but it is something that it means that we get better outcomes when women are at the table. So I also have the great role tonight, I think, of presenting some of the organisations that have already stepped up to sign the pledge. So we might as well do it now. What do you think? I think so. Yeah, okay.
You're going to stand down there.
Yes, and you'll do the... All right.
We're a double act, I love it.
So thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Libby. She's right. We are now going to be presenting representatives from the organisations who have already taken the pledge to come forward and receive their certificate, which we hope is shared with your organisation on your social media, and anyone that comes in contact with you. So as I call your name, if you could come up and receive the certificate from City of Greater Geelong, CEO Ali Wasty. Thank you. From the Geelong Regional Library, CEO David Simmons.
Hello, Dave, and thanks for having us.
From Women's Health and Wellbeing, Barwon South West, CEO Jodie Hill. From Bellarine Wellbeing Connect, the CEO of Bellarine Community Health and BWC Chair, Kathy Russell.
Thank you, Kathy. You do an amazing job. Thank you.
From the Zonta Club of Geelong, Vice President Nicole Gallagher. From the Geelong West Neighbourhood House, Treasurer Marg Burke and Rosemary Nugent. There's no party without Rosemary. And from 94.7, The Pulse, Board Member Georgia Kostansnov. Thank you. Thank you, Libby. I'm just going to call on Ali Wasty, the CEO from the City of Greater Geelong, to share with us a few thoughts about the pledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Loretta, and Karina Niatne for your heartfelt welcome to country. I'm absolutely delighted and so proud to receive this certificate on behalf of the City of Greater Geelong, and I really want to thank WILD and the Empowering Women 50/50 Network for this recognition. As an organisation, we've worked with WILD now across a number of elections, and we are so proud to be a formal partner through our recently signed partnership agreement. This agreement really does reflect our shared commitment to advancing gender equality and strengthening women's participation in leadership, decision-making and community life. When we have gender equality, everyone benefits. It creates stronger organisations, a leadership that is more representative of the communities we serve, and better outcomes. And Libby, you articulated that so well tonight. We're also proud to support the network's vision of achieving 50/50 representation at the upcoming 2028 council elections, because local government should be as diverse as the communities it serves. Encouraging more women to put themselves forward for leadership roles is an important part of that journey, and I personally will continue to be a strong advocate for women getting involved in our democratic process. I'm so looking forward also to attending the upcoming Mary Rogers Awards at State Parliament on Thursday week alongside Councillor Sinclair, Councillor Cadwell and Councillor Wilkinson and WILD representatives Jenny and Ellen. Mary Rogers was Victoria's first woman councillor and was elected to Richmond Council in 1920. It's the second year of the awards, and they highlight the outstanding contributions of women as civic leaders in local government. The City is so proud of our work with WILD that we nominated, and I have to give a shout out to my wonderful team over there because I didn't do the application. It's my wonderful team here tonight who nominated our partnership for the Gender Equality Council Champion Award in the /regional rural area. And we have been shortlisted in that category. So I would really kindly ask that you all have your fingers crossed for us next Thursday. It's going to be a very inspiring evening, serving as an opportunity to further promote and advocate for gender equality. So thank you again to WILD for your leadership and advocacy, and to everyone here for tonight for championing a more equal future for our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie, and fingers and toes crossed for next Thursday. And now we're also going to hear from the Zonta Vice President, Nicole Gallagher.
And so I too would like to acknowledge the lands and the traditional owners of the Wadawurrung and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and any of those who are watching the replay. I'm very pleased to be here representing the Zonta Club of Geelong and to make this pledge on behalf of our members. Zonta's mission is to build a better world for women and girls. It's a little bit aligned with everything that we've heard here tonight. Advancing gender equality, supporting women's leadership and ending violence against women are all central to that mission. Building that better world means ensuring women are not only included in conversations, but are equally represented wherever decisions are made. And that's across our communities, workplaces, and government. When women have an equal voice in leadership and decision-making, our communities are better equipped to reflect the people they serve and respond to their needs. This pledge matters because meaningful change cannot rest with one organisation alone. It takes community groups, councils, and leadership at all levels working together towards a shared vision. And I think we've had a really good shot at that here tonight. By making this pledge, we are reaffirming our commitment to gender equality in every part of community life and to stronger, more representative local democracy. So we're proud to stand alongside you all in building a world and a future where girls and women are safe, heard, represented, and able to lead.
Okay, are you ready to act? Now, Jenny and the Wild Committee are flooding the seats as we speak with the pledge. Tonight I said we're going to do two things: to listen deeply, which we've done, and the second is to act. Tonight we've witnessed 7 organisations recommit to the pledge, and those organisations represent roughly 3,000 people, if you're thinking about employees and members of those organisations. Now, Wild has, they say you need to make a hairy, audacious goal, and Wild has one of those. They would love 500 organisations to be signed up to the pledge by the next council elections in 2028. That's organisations, businesses, groups across City of Greater Geelong, Surf Coast, Golden Plains, Colac and Otway and Shire and the Borough of Queenscliff. So the invitation to each person, and there's maybe there's 80 in the room, 80, 500 divided by 80. Look, if you can all get 6 people and 6 organisations, then we'd knock it out of the park. So the invitation, seriously, is to take a flyer. Have a think about the organisations, businesses, groups that you interact with, and ask them if they're prepared to take the pledge. The information on what to do next is on your flyer, and it would blow Jenny Wills' socks off if we could get to that target. So we're going to close out the evening now, and I would like to begin by thanking the Geelong Regional Library Corporation, and in particular the team here at the Geelong Library and Heritage Centre for supporting Wild in hosting tonight. We love it here. Please have us again. As I mentioned at the beginning of this evening, this has all been recorded, and if you want to revisit this discussion, share it with someone, maybe share it with an organisation that you're hoping that they will take the pledge, then it will be available on the library's YouTube channel in a couple of days' time. Thanks again to all our speakers, especially also to the Wild Committee for their tireless work led by Jenny Wills. And thanks to all of you who've attended. If you've done 2 in a row, well done. We'll see you back here next year. Thank you so much.